Until now, we are rendering all the threads along with their posts in a single page. It seems like a good time to move on and create a page that will display a single thread. I would like to visit /thread/id, like /thread/5, and view the thread with a specified ID. To implement this, we are going to implement client-side routing using Vue Router. Vue Router is an official Vue.js plugin that maps components to routes and makes building single-page applications with Vue.js a breeze. If you are not familiar with Vue Router, I recommend that you watch our Vue Router for Everyone course. This course is taught by Debbie O'Brien. In the masterclass, we will get right into using Vue Router. So, if you want to brush up the router's functionality, you will find everything in our course dedicated to that. Excellent! Here I have opened the guide for the latest version of Vue Router that is compatible with Vue 3. At the time of this recording, Vue Router 4 is very new and the guide is available under next.router.vuejs.org. Make sure you are not browsing the old guide that is for Vue.js 2. Great, let's install it. I will copy-paste this command in my terminal that will install Vue Router 4 using npm. Great, let's set it up now. I will put the guide side by side. I will do this installation inside the main.js file. As you see on the top, you first need to define some components that will be our route components. We already have one page, that is our home page. So I will import that. Great. Next we need to define some routes. I will copy this part from the guide. I will also break it into multiple lines to make it easier to read. This route object is defined for the path /, which is our homepage, and it requires a component to show when this path is visited. In our case, this component is page home. Next, we should create the router instance and pass the routes option. I will also copy this part from the guide as it looks a bit verbose. Let's remove the comments. So what this does is that it creates the router variable using the Vue Router create router function, and inside it passes the history mode that it is initially set to that, and the routes object that we get from here, or the routes array. In order to use Vue Router, we need to import it. So let's do that and import it from our npm package we just installed. Lastly, we need to tell our application to use the router we have created with this function. We can do that using the use method that is available under our app instance. We have called our app forum app, so here we will say forum app use router. Okay, I think this looks good. Let's check it out in the browser. We get an error here that says cannot read property create router of undefined. So this refers to this line where we use viewRouter.createRouter. The reason we get this error is because viewRouter doesn't export an object called viewRouter. Instead, it exports a collection of functions. If we're going to import it like that, we will have to say that we're going to import everything as viewRouter from viewRouter. Let's try that. And now our page is back. However, we are not using viewRouter yet. In order to put viewRouter in use, we have to use the router view component in our template. In our case, we should use it inside our root component appView, where we have created the div with the ID of container. This component will always render the active page based on the route the user is visiting. So when we are on the home page, router view will render the page home component. So I will delete this line. And I will also remove the references for page home from my script. Great. If we refresh the browser now, our application still works, but this time we are using the router view and not hard coding the page home component here. In the browser, you can also tell that we are using the router now because we get this hashtag in the URL. If you don't want to have the hashtag, you can change the history mode in the configuration to the HTML5 option using the Create Web History function. I recommend that you use the HTML5 history mode so your URLs look more natural. This setting, though, might require some configuration when you deploy to a server. I will leave a link for that in the description in case you need it. If we check back in the browser, it still works even when we don't have the hashtag in the URL. Awesome! Before we call this done, I want to give you a few tips. First of all, it's a good practice to give our route a name so we can easily reference it in our code. When we are using named routes, it is easier to refactor URLs in the future without having to update our application link. We will see more about this benefit later in this course. I will name our route Home. Next, here we're importing the complete Vue Router library. It would be better to import only the functions we use and let Webpack delete the rest of the code that we don't need from our final application bundle. We can do that by importing Create Router and Create Web History from Vue Router. Notice that Vue Router is a minimal library, so the two functions we use are almost as big as the full plugin. However, we save 1 kilobyte, which is better than nothing.